In this lesson, we're going to look at an alternate method to filleting the edges on the speaker grills. So in the previous lesson, we had some issues putting the fillets on all of the circles. Specifically in the area here, we had to actually go in and use the pipe, split, and blend surface command. So we're going to look at a different way that we can handle this. I do want to point out this is going to end up giving us a meshed surface. The surface will no longer be a NURB surface. This method is fine if you plan on rendering the part either in Rhino or in another render program, or this method will also work if you're going to send the part out to a 3D printer, because ultimately you have to mesh all your parts when they go to a 3D printer. You do want to avoid this method if your parts are going to be used for any kind of production, because once they're meshed, you're really not going to be able to work with them anymore, or any place you send them to will not be able to work with them anymore. So again, this is more for a visual kind of a thing. So we have a lot of fillet edges we have to apply here. And because this isn't round, it's a rectangular shape, there's more of a likelihood of some of these fillets not working, especially as we have joined surfaces. So Rhino 5 has a nice little feature built in, and it's also available as a plugin for Rhino 4, but I'm using Rhino 5 specifically here, so let's take a look at how you apply that. What it's used for is actually just for rendering. So we'll select the part, go up to Render, we'll go down to Effects, and we can select Edge Softening. Now I do want to mention actually that this technique is based on the render mesh settings that you have. So let me escape this for just a moment, and let's check on what settings we have for our mesh. So I'll go to File, I'll select Properties, and I'll check on my mesh. And right now we have a custom mesh. And this would work fine, but it's actually going to give us too fine of a mesh. So it's really going to be memory intensive. And we'll find on a surface about this size that smooth and slower actually works really good for this. So I'll just hit OK on that. We just zoom out. So now we have our surface here. I'm going to come in. Again, I'm going to go to Render, Effects, Edge Softening. I'll click on this and I'll make that a 0.12. And we'll see what happens here. Hit Enter to apply the command. And we wait a moment. And Rhino's processing all of this. Now, depending on your mesh setting and the complexity of your part, this sometimes can take a while. And when I deselect the part, I'll kind of zoom in here. You'll notice there's this black circle around all of the rectangular holes. Remember, we're just using an effect. We haven't actually put this filleted edge. Rhino is just sort of pretending it's there. So this is really where the edge ends. Now, if we're just going to do all of our renderings within Rhino using either Rhino Renderer or Flamingo Renderer, then we'd be fine. But we're going to ultimately export our files and render in KeyShot. One of the issues is because this is an effect within Rhino, it won't actually export. There's a workaround for that. We can select the part, and then I can start typing extract, and you'll see partway down the list here is extract render mesh. So I'll just click on that, and again, Rhino's going to have to think for a little while. So what that's going to do is actually make a render mesh based on this. So it's going to make its own surface. And again, this can take quite a while to figure out. All right, once it's finished, we now have actually two surfaces here. So if I deselect and click on the part, Rhino's asking me if I want the mesh or the poly surface. I'm going to select the poly surface or the NURB surface, and I'm going to hide it. Now if I go to rendered mode, you'll notice that we've got all of our nice filleted edges all taken care of for us. And because I've meshed this, I can export this. This will go into KeyShot or any other render program. And I can also take this part now, and I could export it as an STL and 3D print it. So again, it's just sort of a nice quick way, not for production parts, but for 3D printed parts or for rendered parts. So you don't have to play around with the issues of kind of filleting an edge if you're having some troubles with that. So now if I bring back the rest of my model, it will take a moment or two to spin up there. There we go. And if I do Control-Alt-R, so even though that's a mesh surface and not a NURB surface with an effect applied to it, it still looks the same when we render it. And I can switch that layer off and switch this one on. And remember, our FaceBez G1 is actually the one we took the time to put all those fillets on. And in the rendering, you can't really tell a whole lot of difference. So again, if you've got a tricky surface, using the edge softening tools in Rhino 5 may just really help you out. And that concludes our look at applying the fillet edge to the face bezel G3.